today I felt like doing some baking, and I love this book. I can't remember where I got it, but I've had it for several years, and I just really like this book. It has lots of really good recipes in it. And today I'm going to be making a breakfast like coffee cake, cinnamon crumb cake. So come along with me as we make this cake together. In my experience with baking, I have found that in most recipes you can cut the amount of oil and the amount of sugar that they suggest by as much as half, because I feel like, especially in the American diet, we have way too much sugar and way too much fat in our diet, and so the recipes kind of portray that. So whenever I do a recipe, I really try to lighten it up as much as I possibly can. Now this recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of melted butter, and it also says you can use oil in place of the butter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put in 1/2 cup of oil and then 1/4 of a cup of applesauce. I don't want to put more applesauce than that in this recipe because this is not an applesauce cake. This is a cinnamon cake. But I also want to lighten this up and make it less calorie dense and a little bit healthier. So here I have 1/2 cup of sunflower oil. Now you could even reduce the amount of this oil even further if you wanted to, but I do want this to be a moist cake. I don't want it to be dry. So I'm going to put 1/2 cup of oil and 1/4 of a cup of applesauce, and I have organic unsweetened applesauce that I got from Walmart. And because I do want this to have a buttery flavor, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of butter extract, imitation butter extract. This is a 1/2 teaspoon measure, so I'm going to put 2 of those in. I will have this recipe in the description box below, and I will have it as the book says it so that you can make whatever adjustments you want to it, or you can cook it just the way it is. So the next thing you want to add to this bowl is the flour, and it calls for 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And this is just plain white flour. You could cut this with whole wheat flour if you wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and make it with white flour today. You're also going to add the sugars. Now it calls for 1 cup of firmly packed brown sugar and 1 cup of white sugar. And like I said, I feel like you can reduce the amount of sugar in things. So what I'm going to do is, instead of 1 cup of brown sugar, I'm going to put in 3/4 of a cup. So that's 3/4 of a cup of firmly packed brown sugar. And then instead of a cup of white sugar, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of my stevia baking blend. So 1/2 cup of the stevia baking blend is the same sweetness as a whole cup of sugar. And since I am adding the stevia blend, that's why I went ahead and just left the sweetness of 1 cup of sugar. Now if you don't like things as sweet, then most definitely you can reduce the amount. You can even reduce the amount of stevia that you put in your recipe. But this is a cake after all, not bread, so we do want it a bit sweeter. The next thing you want to add to this bowl is 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And I just have sea salt here from Costco. You want to put in 1 teaspoon of cinnamon And like I always do, I put in heaping teaspoons because I love cinnamon. I don't think you can ever have too much cinnamon. Then you're going to put in 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. And nutmeg is a very strong spice, so unless you really love nutmeg, I wouldn't put more than 1/4 of a teaspoon. So you are going to blend this mixture up until it's thoroughly combined. So then from this bowl, you're going to remove 3/4 of a cup of this mixture and put it in a separate bowl. You're going to add 1 more teaspoon of cinnamon and 1 cup of chopped walnuts. And this will be the crumb topping. Now I added more than a cup of walnuts probably. I didn't measure, I just kind of eyeballed. But I like lots of crunchy bits in my desserts, so if it's a bit more than a cup, that's not a problem. So I'm just mixing all that 3/4 of a cup of the mixture, a cup of chopped walnuts, and a teaspoon of sugar together thoroughly. And like I said, this is going to be the crumb topping. So we're going to set this aside. We're going to bring our mixer back, and we're going to add the baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, the baking soda, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Now I have powdered vanilla, and so it's concentrated. So for every teaspoon of liquid vanilla that you need, you use 1/4 of a teaspoon of the powdered. So there's 1/4 of a teaspoon of powdered vanilla. You need 1 large egg, one egg. Would you please do something with your bird? And you need 1 cup of buttermilk. Now, as you all know, I am dairy-free, so I'm using cashew milk. And the way that you turn it into like a buttermilk is that you add some sort of an acid. It can be either vinegar or lemon juice. And I have some lemon juice here. I'm just going to add about a tablespoon of lemon juice to the cashew milk. And that kind of turns it into buttermilk. You can do that with regular cow's milk as well. Just add some acid to the milk, and that kind of curdles it and turns it into buttermilk. So now we just need to mix this all up, these final ingredients, till they're thoroughly combined. Okay, so now this is nicely combined. And here I have my prepared pan. It's just a 9x13 pan that I've sprayed with cooking spray. You want to just pour your batter into the pan. and scrape it all out. I'm a stickler for scraping it out, making sure everything is out of the pan. I hate to waste. If you leave a bunch of ingredients in your pan, then all those ingredients get either washed down your drain or in your dishwasher, and that's not good. So I always make sure my bowls are very thoroughly scraped out. So then to the top of this batter, you're just going to sprinkle your crumb topping. Alright, so now I've had my oven preheating at 350 degrees. You want to bake this for about 40 to 45 minutes or until a toothpick inserted test's done. When this is all done and cool and ready to sample, I will bring it back and show you what it looks like and give it a taste test. Okay, so here it is out of the oven. It's still a little bit warm, but I'm going to go ahead and at least cut one piece so I can taste it. I don't know if I'll cut the whole cake right now because, like I said, it's still pretty warm and cakes don't cut as well when they're warm. It's very easy to cut. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Looks very moist. So let me give it a taste. That is absolutely delicious. It tastes kind of like a cinnamon roll to me in a way because of all the cinnamon in it. The nuts are crunchy. It's nice and moist. It's nice and sweet. You can't even tell that I reduced the oil and the sugar in it. It is just absolutely delicious. I highly recommend that you try this recipe. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching, and if you try this recipe, let me know. I'd love to hear back from you. We'll talk to you later, friends. Bye-bye.